Welcome to the first deck introduction after the Knights of the Frozen Throne release, featuring Kazakus Priest. Highlander decks are constructed with no more than one copy of any card in your deck in order to activate powerful cards such as Reno Jackson. With the League of Explorers having rotated out of standard half a year ago, the archetype struggled to find competitive success. Kazakus and Raza the Chained saw some experimentation in Priest, but Highlander lists were consistently outclassed by their Dragon, Purify, and Control counterparts. This was due to the inconsistent nature of Highlander decks, as well as Kazakus potions and Raza's 0-mana hero power not doing enough to make up for the lack of consistency. The archetype required a card that would reward the traditional Priest control strategy with a more direct win condition, or at least a powerful control effect that would work in tandem with the current pool of Highlander activated cards. Enter Shadowreaper Anduin. The Frozen Throne introduced a Death Knight whose summoning wipes out all minions with 5 or more attack, and a hero power that deals 2 damage to a minion or player with the bonus effect of refreshing after playing a card. It didn't take the community long to see the powerful synergy with Raza the Chained, which makes it possible to deal 2 damage for free every time a card is played during their turn, like a better auctioneer Beardo. The effect proved powerful enough to breathe new life into the archetype, with Monsanto having taken his Razakus list to rank 1 on ladder 4 days into the expansion, establishing Kazakus Priest as a potential meta powerhouse for high legend players to be wary of. Highlander Priest is traditionally played as a control deck, with a diverse range of access to removal, halting the flow of board development and damage from your opponent until you've secured your win condition. This is accomplished with the strategic use of AoE such as Holy Nova and Dragonfire Potion, single target removal such as Shadow Word's Pain and Death, and value spells such as Potion of Madness and Mind Control. Priest is especially well equipped to support the Highlander strategy thanks to Shadow Visions generating you a copy of whatever spell you need from your deck at the time, and Lyra the Sun Shard generating more. Cards such as Curious Glimmer Root also have the added benefit of generating resources from added copies of a card from your opponent's deck into your hand, compensating for the lower access to Northshire Cleric and Power Word Shield to cycle through your deck. Kazakus Priest has 2 win conditions. One is to outlast your opponent's aggro strategy by preventing them from securing a significant board presence and preserving your life total until they run out of fuel. By establishing high health minions like Priest of the Feast or buffing smaller minions with Power Word Shield and Cabal Talon Priest, a player will be able to preserve their removal spells as they make value trades against traditionally weaker aggro minions. This strategy can even be accomplished against mid-range druid decks, depending on what you're using, and how you time using it. The second win condition is Shadowreaper Anduin with Raza the Chained. The combination is strong enough that some players have gone to calling the archetype Machine Gun Priest or Shotgun Priest, due to the seemingly endless stream of damage a Priest player can create in one turn. While some lists emphasize this strategy as a combo deck with Prophet Villain and Mind Blast, any Kazakus Priest should be able to develop enough damage to threaten control and combo decks if you adapt your strategy to generate more damage later in the game. While this win condition is draw dependent, there are enough removal options to help a player last long enough to use both cards. Even against aggressive and mid-range decks, the ability to pick off smaller minions in the late game of aggressive matchups can be vital to stabilizing the board as long as you can afford to rely on Priest of the Feast or Greater Healing Potion for health gain. The most successful list for the archetype can be attributed to Monsanto, who favored tech minions such as Galaka Crawler, Swamp Ooze, and Gluttonous Ooze over larger threats, as well as the destructive combination of Pint-Sized Potion and Shadow Word Horror in addition to other AoE. This improved his matchups against aggro decks such as Pirate Warrior, which had been a more common encounter in High Legend in response to the rise of Jade in mid-range Druid at the time. With less minions and more spells, Kazakus Priest can be a complex deck to pilot. Against aggro, ensure that you've set up a board state early enough so you can finish the game by neutralizing all their threats. Burst decks like Token Shaman and Aggro Druid can easily find 15 plus damage if left unchecked, so assembling follow-up plays to close out the game can be just as important as surviving long enough to draw the AoE you need to stabilize. Know when to be reactive to your opponent and when to be aggressive. In some matchups, you won't get the opportunity to piece together all you need for a Void Form Machine Gun turn before your opponent swings the game in their favor. Vulnerable game states such as this make it all the more important for players to make informed decisions based on the state of the game. Even if it means leaving an opposing Alexstrasza on the board, it may be more important to amass removal and minions for a Raza or Shadowreaper top deck to complete your combo and then begin bursting your opponent for damage the following turn. Know what to look for in Kazakus and what options you have available. Most players will forget that he can generate a 1-mana spell that can deal 2 damage as AoE. Instead, they'll pick higher mana cost effects out of habit for more powerful effects, forgetting the utility of a 1-mana spell that can be paired with Thalnos for efficient board wipes, leaving mana for board development or cycle. In control matchups, one of the more powerful combinations you can create from Kazakus are polymorphing a random enemy minion and resurrecting 2 friendly minions for 5 mana. Against a turn 8 Tyrian Forging on an empty board, few things will swing the game in your favor more than setting up plays that remove threats and develop your board. One of the most important skills to develop while piloting this deck is mulligans. As a Highlander deck, you'll rarely have the opportunity to be as picky with your opening hand as more consistent decks that carry 2 of everything. Your priority should be early game minions, but don't let that stop you from holding on to key spells such as Potion of Madness if you anticipate an aggro matchup, or Raza the Chained if you anticipate control. If you have enough early game minions in hand, then holding on to Shadow Visions will provide you flexibility against unfamiliar opponents. Meta awareness will be your greatest ally in deciding how to mulligan your opening hand. The biggest tech decision to make with Kazakus Priest is the style of deck you should pilot. While some will be better geared for more aggressive matchups, others will have a higher win rate against control and mid-range lists. Newer players should play more minion-heavy lists such as Zixo's interpretation of the archetype to get a grasp of the general strategy, and feel out what cards will be better served depending on how you draw. For instance, if you're playing against more aggro druid and you draw mind control within your first 5 turns, then that would be a good point to switch it out for an anti-aggro card. Galaka Crawler, Hungry Crab, and both Swamp Ooze and Gluttonous Ooze can improve matchups against aggressive decks. Unlike Control or Dragon Priest, the Highlander list traditionally struggles against decks that would exploit its inconsistency, so the deck should afford to put in anti-aggro measures if they become more prevalent in the meta. Pint-Sized Potion and Shadow Word Horror are a 2-card combination for guaranteed board wipes against aggro in most mid-range lists. You'll find it especially useful in removing buffed taunt minions from the Plague mid-range druid deck that's becoming more popular in these first weeks. Spirit Lash has great utility against aggro, but will depend on a large board state for the most value. Paired with Thalnos, this will become one of your strongest tools against aggro token decks. Medivh, Free from Amber, Lich King, and Obsidian Statue are a couple of additions you can make to your deck in a control meta, prioritizing a broader late game strategy over anti-aggro tech. Getting a Death Coil from the Lich King, for instance, will provide you with more reach against Exodia Mage decks. In general, a Kazakus Priest deck should be adopting a more minion-oriented strategy in the control meta, or assembling a greater burst damage combo with Prophet Velen if there are enough Exodia Mages or similar combo decks. You will ultimately be adapting your deck for the matchups you run into the most. Though the deck will rarely see the same levels of win streaks as other more consistent decks, this deck has the unique ability to introduce several tech cards without compromising the deck's core strategies. With decks continuing to change in prevalence on the ladder, there are a few archetypes to have emerged from the Frozen Throne meta better suited for exploring the ladder than the Kazakus Priest. To see how this archetype performs against most popular decks, be sure to watch out for our first Tempo Storm meta snapshot of the new meta. And as always, please leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and join the discussion in the comments below. Let us know what you'd like us to cover in our next installment of deck introductions. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all of Tempo Storm's news and Hearthstone content.